Achieving prosperity for all through the elimination of poverty has long been a desire of the Chinese nation, and Chinese communists have endeavored to transform this dream into reality for generations.
社会主义呢，就是要让人民过上幸福美好的生活。人民的美好生活一个民族一个家庭一个人都不能少。
This is a solemn promise. I will devote all my life to the people. Yunshan Village in Lancang County is located near the southwestern border of China and has been in severe poverty for a long time. In 2015, the central government asked the Chinese Academy of Engineering to lend their assistance in the fight against poverty. Zhu Youyong, a plant pathologist, has brought his team here a total of 14 times.
鸡蛋包谷一个火炭，看完以后我都流泪。本来自己还以为是有能力的人，但是还有这么多的贫困人口，我们实际上是失职，感到非常内疚。
Zhu Youyong has decided to set up base in this remote village to remain as close as possible to the reality of the situation. He soon discovered that with little rainfall and almost no frost, the weather here would be perfect for growing potatoes, and if the villagers were to start growing them in November or December, they'd be ready for harvest right after the Chinese New Year. This favorable timing would make Lancang one of the earliest potato-producing areas in the country. However, for these people, winter was a time for rest, not work.
冬天不干事的，我们跟他说点什么呢，他就承受。实际上就是我们来扶贫就给他点钱给他点东西。那来没有，我们没有，那我就教他们说，你们跟着我干。他不相信。
In order to convince the villagers, Zhu Youyong leased a patch of land from the village and led a group of experts into the field every day. Just 3 months later, the ground was littered with huge potatoes.
1亩地可以收3吨多马铃薯，这个水平是一个什么水平呢？是欧洲河南人种的水平，1亩地1个人就脱贫了。
Zhu and his team had proven to the villagers that after 100 days, 1 mu of land, about 670 square meters, could yield over 10,000 yuan worth of potatoes. Then he spread the word that free training programs would be open to the public.
好不容易他们来了，我就是刚集气了，我都也刚刚洗了气了。
Zhang Liu Jin also responded to the intriguing news.
他是手把手亲自教给我们的。
不穿鞋子做上帝嘛那也。
Zhang Liu Jin's first harvest brought him more than 20,000 yuan of income.
老师，我回去给我媳妇报告。
After Zhang Liu Jin's success, the entire village jumped on board. In March 2018, during the 13th National People's Congress, Zhu Youyong brought a special gift to the assembly, a potato weighing nearly 1.5 kilograms.
16年我们示范推广了100亩，每亩平均3.1吨，卖价3000块1吨，1亩地农民收入9000块钱。
With the policy support of the government, the technical support of scientists and orders from distributors, the farmers of Lancang County gradually began to realize the potential in growing potatoes. By marrying agriculture with the power of science and technology, the industry grew from 100 mu in one township to over 10,000 in 17. After 5 years, more than 2,200 farmers are now professionally trained and have not only lifted themselves out of poverty, but also served as an inspirational example for others. Zhu Youyong is always reminded of President Xi Jinping's words, Go to the fields to work out your thesis and develop scientific and technological breakthroughs to serve the great cause of modernization.
把论文写在大地上，真正来地里面写，那才叫真本事。
Zhu Youyong is just one among tens of thousands of scientists who have been willing to get their hands dirty in these underdeveloped areas. By sharing what they have learned with farmers, they have opened up more doors for others looking to achieve wealth and success. Since her home is isolated from the rest of her small town by this huge canyon, Nali has had to learn to use the cableway from an early age. Soon after she was born, her parents divorced and left home. Her father left for work elsewhere and never returned, and her mother got remarried, leaving her to the care of her paternal grandparents. When she was 3, a tree twig grazed her left eye, and with no quality treatment available, she was left with partial eyesight. Three years ago, Dr. Guan Yanping paid a visit to her household. She not only brought medicine for Nali's grandparents who were suffering from chronic illness, but also took Nali to the county hospital for an eye examination. While the exam confirmed she would never regain sight in her left eye, she found great comfort in the doctor's companionship.
摸我的手，抱在妈妈的怀里一样的感觉。
In March 2017, Dr. Guan Yanping was sent to Nujiang from Zhuhai City, Guangdong Province, as part of an East-West cooperation strategy. This required the wealthier eastern provinces to provide poverty alleviation assistance to the underdeveloped western provinces, such as capital, medical services, and technical support. In Dr. Guan's case, she was to become the resident physician of Bingzhong Luo Town, where her primary objective would be to raise the level of health awareness among its people. Since villagers were still not coming to the clinic, Dr. Guan and her colleagues decided to bring their services to them instead. However, that meant traversing dangerous paths along the cliffside, lugging their heavy medical equipment along with them.
因为长期头发被水浸着呀，所以它这个地方皮炎很重的。以前是这么大一片啊，现在都基本上好了。
Shui Luojun has had a serious mental illness for over 20 years, and when he has a psychotic episode, he becomes a danger to others, and nobody dare get close to him except for his mother. Every time Dr. Guan Yanping came to the village, she would wash his hair, trim his nails, and try to communicate with him the best she could. Finally, one winter, after more than half a year of efforts, he finally responded to her.
那天天气特别好，我说我们出来晒太阳，他就然后就慢慢扶他起来，哎，他就开始跟我说话了。我说你说你好，他半天才蹦出俩字来，你好。看到我开不开心呐？开心了，开心了。好啊，好啊，好啊。
After that, many of the other villagers started opening up their hearts to Dr. Guan. Now they trust her consultation on all sorts of health issues.
那个时候他们好困难，村民他就问我，他说：“医生啊，鸡蛋能不能吃？”我说：“能吃啊。”哎，他就跑来呀，鸡蛋。 有差不多10多个鸡蛋就跑过来了。医生，你吃啊呀？他那个时候是留着要孵小鸡儿的。哎呦，我说这几个鸡蛋不留着孵小鸡儿，他怎么回去煮给我们吃？还有那个时候特别感动，也哎呀，特别心疼他。
In the fall of 2017, Right after Dr. Guan Yanping completed her first-round medical survey in town, she was told that her 6-month assignment was finished and she could return home.
这一撂下，再来一批，刚刚熟悉，又要走了。当地的医护人员每来一个人适应一个人，每来一个人适应一个人，是很难的，又很乱。
After careful consideration, Dr. Guan Yanping submitted an application to her superior, intimating her desire to extend her term. Her application was approved, and she ended up serving the town for another 3 years. During this time, Dr. Guan Yanping set up individual health profiles for every resident of Bingzhongluo town, starting a family doctor program, and before long, all 5,143 residents with poverty status had access to medical care. Under the care of the party and government, new roads were built to connect every village and ethnic group in Bingzhongluo town. In addition, Xue Luojun's home was rebuilt, and Nali and her grandparents moved to their new home in the county. For the first time in her life, Nali will have her own room like any other normal girl. And as a housewarming gift, Dr. Guan Yanping has even bought her a new bed.
看那边多美！你看这整个贡山县城哦，怒江就在我们的脚下，那看到没有？哇，哎呦，好仙啊！
Lying in her bed, Nali tells Dr. Guan that tonight she will have nothing but sweet dreams.
会梦到什么？
梦到王医生，我们一起玩。
我们在哪里一起玩啊？
海边。
哇，海边！哎呀！
For Dr. Guan, the sea is of particular importance as it reminds her of her hometown. Now, with the 6th medical team on its way, she's preparing to give her final goodbyes.
"把宝宝喂得健健康康，让他健健康康成长。哎呀，小宝贝，这个是谁画的？
太好了，还是舍不得你走啊。
我也舍不得你们。
再见啊，再见。
丙中洛是我又一个故乡。脱贫攻坚路上有千千万万的人，我在这真的就其中的一个小小的市镇。其实走到最后，走到今天，虽然有苦，还是甜多。这里的一山一水一草一木，这里的人，永远都不会忘掉的。
Ma Huai is a remote village located deep in the mountains. Ever since 1999, the villagers here have been trying to dig a tunnel through the belly of the mountain to the outside world.
住在冰冷的水里，一个挨着一个，用大锤敲一点，就一个传给一个传出去。那个油烟就熏在你的脸上，只能看到两个眼睛圈圈转一转的，根本认不到对方是谁。
Deng Yingxiang has no love for this mountain. In her eyes, it is the reason she lost her son.
那天晚上很黑，孩子发高烧不退，往医院跑，都还没有到的时候，我们就感觉他就没气了。他才是3个月大，就在我的手上就渐渐的冰凉下去。我就放声大哭，我牙都差不多咬碎了。
Tragedies like this made the villagers realize they would have no future unless they could find a way through the mountain. Using basic sledgehammers and drills, it took 14 months to complete the tunnel. But the tunnel was so small, the only one through it was on one's knees.
人可以放手下来，就像狗一样可以趴出去。年纪大了一点，这些老人呐、手指甲全部都磨没有了，没有这个指甲在了，里面的东西运不出去，外面的东西运不进来。
Unfortunately, their efforts did little to improve their situation. But in 2010, Deng Yingxiang climbed back into the makeshift tunnel, determined to build an actual road through the mountain. She lived inside the tunnel for more than 6 months, which at that time was nothing more than a cave. Luckily, she had the support of the local party committee, the government, and local villagers. For 12 months, everyone banded together to build a real tunnel. And in 2014, the county government granted them an additional 1.8 million yuan in funds to complete it. When all was said and done, they had constructed a tunnel 216 meters long, 5 meters high, and 4 meters wide, connecting Mahuai village with the world beyond.
11年的时候，人均收入只是800元，我们到现在人均收入是14000多元了，压根都不是贫困村了。我这辈子想都没想到，马怀村会有今天的变化。
With the same drive and determination Deng Yingxiang exhibited when building the tunnel, Huang Dafa, an old party secretary of Caowangba village, threw all his effort into fixing the waterways. Tired of living in a village suffering from drought, he and his countrymen dug a conduit nearly 10 kilometers long across 3 mountains and 3 cliffs. For these villagers, who had been struggling in poverty for generations, this provided new life. Forestry expert Li Baoguo dedicated 35 years of his life to planting trees in the barren and rocky mountains, leaving behind a forest of fortunes. After his death, a group of experts continued with the cause he started. In doing so, they established 50 agricultural innovation stations on Taihang Mountain, offering the poor residents here new opportunities for development. On Daba Mountain, poverty alleviation worker Zhang Chu-wei, himself nearly blind, helped more than 140,000 people climb out of poverty. Huang Shiyan, the former party secretary, heroically lifted his county out of poverty before his death, after serving a term of 8.5 years. His last words were, "We can't afford to be complacent when it comes to poverty alleviation work." Shuijia village of Hunan province has survived on its tea production for generations. Zheng Deping's tea garden is nearly 7,000 square meters, and his family have been tending to it for several years now. Unfortunately, the return for their labor has hardly met their basic needs. That was until a stranger approached him with an unusual proposition.
那你个不打农药行不行呢？我说不行，虫子吃完。他说那你山上有野茶没？我说有啊。他说那野茶长得好不好？我说长得好啊。他说那你不打药没？我说山上往过这茶鼓鼓的那个打野茶药哎，没打过。他就当时笑起来。他说那你说不打药，虫子吃完，你为什么山上野茶不吃完？把我问得没得话说的了。
That rain season there was a flood, and the village was unable to ship out any tea. But when the anonymous outsider offered to pay for the construction of a new bridge, the other households started to come around.
说实在话，我有点烦他，真的烦他。每天都是6点钟准时就搞到这个外边，他都不进屋子。到堂兄弟上工了，他就走了，天天如此。有几次我都跟到后面，我认为他就回家去了。不是的，都是在工地上搬石头。 一个人抱一包100斤的那个水泥，都是往沙堆上搬的。
Because it was difficult to remember everyone's name, he came up with his own nicknames for them. He called the woman beekeeper Sister Honeybee, another who always seemed busy with her work, Sister Worker, and a single man in the village, Brother Wife Seeker. Eventually, through his leadership, he gained their trust and friendship, uniting the entire village in the process.
有些调皮的人，真就为几块钱都真的吵架的人，都去参加义务劳动，搞得还蛮开心，真的了不得。
Their benefactor was Wang Xinfa, a veteran and retired police officer of the Shijiazhuang City Police. In 2013, when President Xi Jinping initiated the Targeted Poverty Alleviation Strategy, Wang formed a team he called the Veterans Aid Team. When they landed in Shimen County, they each picked a village to be responsible for. Wang Xinfa chose Shuijia Village, the poorest at the time.
他那时候就讲时间不等人，我应该去承担这种社会义务。他说：“谢表妹子，我在前面干着，只要我后面跟了一个老百姓，我就成功了。”
Wang Xinfa withdrew 640,000 renminbi from his own savings to build a road for the villagers. However, he apparently knew how dangerous it would be, because he wrote a letter assuming all responsibility should something go wrong. To his surprise, more than a dozen other party members and villagers added their fingerprints to the document.
他一个外地人在这里给我们办事，都有这样大的决心，我们怕什么？后头的话，真的就成了刻骨铭心的兄弟了。
While Wang Xinfa was surveying the land, he contracted a serious skin infection. But not once did he let his own physical suffering interfere with his work. His dedication touched the hearts of the villagers, and they eventually elected him as the honorary director of Shuijia Village.
一起举手通过搞得热血沸腾，多人去举手的，还有玩游戏过人都还举着双手
Here, the arable land per capita is less than 600 square meters, and food is so scarce, villagers have had to harvest corn weeds growing in between the cracks of rocks. It turns out the underlying problem was that for hundreds of years, people here have been burying their loved ones in the soil, thus taking up huge chunks of fertile land. However, when Wang Xinfa tried to convince the villagers to relocate the graves to the public cemetery, they shut their doors in his face before he could even finish his sentence.
我就看王大哥就端着这个茶水，就这样用手这样端着，然后那个老百姓就说：“他说，哎，你们就可以走了，不在这了。”就这样子，把明村长肩膀这样一拨楞。我们下这个坡的时候，哎呦，那个时候我看到他的身影，哎，我就觉得说不出来的一种感觉。我那时候也在想，我说我不知道王大哥的家人看到以后会多心疼，多伤心。他在这里为老百姓，这大岁数了还在这儿，他就转过来，一看我在那掉眼泪，他 他就笑着就嘲笑我，他说：“哎，谢苗妹子，你还是当过兵的，你眼窝就这么浅。”
Wang Xinfa and other party members continued visiting the villagers, explaining the many ways in which it was necessary to relocate the graves. Through their efforts, thousands of years of traditions were literally uprooted. In the end, the remains of 71 graves were relocated to the public cemetery at the top of the mountain. After that, Wang Xinfa and the village leaders brought in agricultural experts to teach villagers how to grow their own organic tea. Instead of using pesticide, they would learn more effective ways to plant, maintain, and harvest their crop. The per capita income of the villagers grew from less than 2,000 yuan in 2013 to over 6,000 yuan in 2016, and as a result, Shuijia village was finally lifted out of poverty. Sadly, Wang Xinfa never got the chance to see the fruits of his labor. On February 23, 2017, he suffered a heart attack while planning the construction of the 6th bridge. According to the villagers, he fell down right on top of his unfinished blueprints. In a letter Wang Xinfa wrote to his wife 30 years earlier, he said, "If joining the party can be considered a faith, I can't think of anything better to believe in than the Communist Party." Because of this faith, this veteran, who could have lived out the rest of his life in comfort with his family, chose to devote himself to the poor and needy. Because of the same faith, his daughter Wang Ting gave up her job in Beijing and came to the village to continue what he had left unfinished. Because of his faith, the villagers would eventually bury him in the mountains and visit his grave with a fresh cup of tea every spring harvest.
民村长，媳妇儿兄弟娶上媳妇儿了。
民村长，你看蜂蜜蜜这的黄子也建好的，我现在的生活比这个蜂蜜还甜。
民村长，现在的路修太好了，叫个兄弟再也不会叫狗的了。
民营村长，我们不等不靠不要，靠勤劳真的能致富。
我是一名党员，是一名军人，我就想把这党员他的带头作用和军人的那种团队的精神带给咱们当地的老百姓，走共同富裕的道路就会更快一些。
Wang Xinfa's purpose was to provide a better life for these villagers, a goal as simple as it was selfless. Many poverty alleviation workers are working all over China towards the same purpose, each leaving behind a heartwarming and inspiring story in history for all to hear. Longchur village is located in the Qinba Mountains amongst thousands of valleys, canyons, and cliffs. In this village, over 600 residents are scattered over 14 square kilometers of forest land. In the summer of 2020, unusually high temperatures were starting to make the villagers very anxious.
刘家人吃水呀，那叫什么老头？我整那个通透气呀。今天我早去看，单点这样是。
Longchur village relies mostly on the nearby streams. However, their water volumes vary from season to season. For a while, the villagers were thinking of building a reservoir in a naturally formed pond, but a geological survey indicated that not enough water was flowing into the valley to make it viable. That was when a young man by the name of Ren Gangqiang was dispatched by the Guangyuan city government to search for alternative water sources. Since the majority of Qinba Mountain is covered by forest land, it was not uncommon for Ren Gangqiang to come into close contact with the local wildlife.
大概有30多的坡度，我和那个野猪都像是慢动作，就使劲的跑啊，但是就是跑得很慢。
After nearly 2 months adventuring in the mountains, Ren Gangqiang finally found what he was looking for.
我发现那个地形就是像有一个河沟，虽然旱季它没有水，再往上走的话，流水冲刷的印记就会更明显。
Ren knew if he could find a way to channel streams like this into the valley pond, there was a chance they would accumulate enough water for a reservoir. With the help of the local Water Affairs Bureau, several surveys, explorations, and tests were conducted, and in the end, a water diversion project was initiated. However, the success of the project depended wholly on the rainy season. It's been a long, hot summer, and Ren Gangqiang is anxious. Finally, after several days of high temperatures, the rains come.
雨太大。
Before the rain stops, he races over to the pond.
今年一场雨水都全部蓄满了，这真的是天助我也，完完全全出乎意料，大也结结实实的。给村干部一个交代，给老百姓一个交代。
As part of the government's poverty alleviation program, Ren Gangqiang is committed to living in the village for the next 3 years to help improve the lives of its residents. His predecessor was his high school classmate, Chai Xiaofei. Chai had returned to his village to become first secretary while Ren was still studying at Peking University. When he graduated, he was sent to Sichuan, where he received a brief message from his friend which simply said, "Do your best." Tragically, in January of 2018, Chai Xiaofei died at his post. When Ren Gangqiang came to the village for his funeral, he decided to finish what Chai Xiaofei had started. His application was immediately approved, and just like that, he was the new first secretary of the village. For hundreds or even thousands of years, our youth have been encouraged to seek education, opportunities, and success in the big cities far away from their homes. But Ren Gangqiang has done the opposite. He has returned to his roots and is now sacrificing his own personal success to provide opportunities for others.
脱皮攻坚是一个轰轰烈烈的时代，是一个历史大写特写的一个大时代。这个是党和历史给予我们这一代人的历史成长机遇。在这一个时代过程中，没有当一个旁观者，而是一脚一脚的、一步一步的去做这一个时代的实践者。
In 2018, the small village of Baini became known for lifting the largest number of its poor population out of poverty. It started one day in March when the party secretary Zhou Changjian welcomed the government-appointed first secretary to the village.
刚一见面，我心里一下子咯噔了一下，哎，怎么是个女孩子？
That girl was Huang Wenxiu, a recent master's degree graduate from Beijing Normal University. When she arrived, some residents offered her a place to stay, but she decided to sleep in the village committee office instead because she wanted to make it more convenient for the villagers to find her. but at first, no one came.
他进门，我们关门，不让他进来，因为我们怀疑他做什么事，做什么事做不了的，我们不相信他嘛。
In the face of such suspicion and doubt, the young woman was at a complete loss. She wrote in her diary, "I am the first secretary for this poverty alleviation work, and I have a duty to fulfill. I need to have more courage." Huang decided to earn the villagers' trust through her actions. When she learned that a villager's 1-year-old grandson hadn't ever registered as a resident of the village, she volunteered to help the family through the procedure. And when she heard a family was struggling to pay tuition for their children, she immediately helped find them funding.
他说2个儿子的1万了，一路计划我们帮你们申请。
After 2 months of living and working in the village, Huang Wenshou had become familiar with every household, especially the ones that needed her help most. She even made her own map to keep track of them. Soon she began exploring other opportunities for development. When she learned that the climate was perfect for growing a certain type of orange, she and the other village leaders went to see Ban Tong Mao, who owned a successful orchard in the village. But when they offered him a chance to spearhead a new project, he turned them down.
那时候我们这个路相当难走，到季节过的时候，果全部掉到地下来，一个都卖不掉。
Upon hearing this, Huang Wenshou went to the county to apply for funds for a new road. Then she went to the agricultural department and invited their experts to the village.
跑了这么多次，我就真的是被他感动了。
In just 1 year, the mandarin production in Baini village increased from 30,000 kilograms to 250,000 kilograms. But while Ban Tong Mao was excited about a bigger harvest, he couldn't help but worry about the sales. To his surprise, right before harvest time, several groups of wholesale fruit merchants appeared in the village. It turned out Huang had been posting ads and contacting buyers online the entire time. That year, among the villagers who worked alongside Ban Tong Mao, there were 4 families whose annual income reached over 100,000 yuan.
我们卖了5、6万块钱，然后我就觉得这个机会我们已经等了太久了，把卖果的钱拿一部分把这个房子装修。毛坯房我住了13年，他没来的时候，我们也是天天做工，但是我们都几乎看不到希望。
我有许多的想法，给百泥村设计一首村歌，用成都的调子，但是真的水平有限，一直填不出词。
Perhaps Huang Wenshou couldn't finish the lyrics because she was so preoccupied with her work. At that time, she was organizing the building of a reservoir, a basketball court, and providing streetlights for the village. Now that she had the villagers' trust, they were much more willing to lend a hand with other new projects. However, this beautiful woman would end up leaving them too soon. In the early morning of June 17, 2019, Huang Wenshou tragically died in a flood on her way back to Baini village. She was just 30 years old.
真的一点都不相信这种事。
结果呢，没好好像回去不。
我们都还没来得及跟他说声谢谢。
After Huang Wenshou died, local officials went to console her family. It was only then they found out they themselves had only been lifted out of poverty just 3 years prior. In addition, her father had undergone 2 surgeries to remove tumors, and her mother was disabled and suffering from heart disease. Huang Wenshou hadn't mentioned any of these things to a single person. The bracelet her mother is wearing was a gift she had made for her just 3 months before the accident. While Huang Wenxiu was working on her master's degree, she lived a minimalistic life. During her winter and summer vacations, she would stay in Beijing instead of going back home to see her parents. She was saving her money for her father to visit Beijing, which had always been his dream. During that one and only visit, he and his daughter had a discussion about her future.
我们不要闲着，你要为党的工作，回到家乡里面做一个干干净净的人民公仆。
Huang Wenxiu completed her degree with financial aid from the government and joined the Communist Party of China during the third year of her undergraduate program. After graduation, she returned to her hometown and showed her gratitude by dedicating herself to the service of the people.
作为青年一代，我们责无旁贷，不获全胜，绝不收兵。乡村振兴关键在青年，希望大家多多关注农村发展，多多支持农村工作。
On New Year's Eve of 2019, President Xi Jinping delivered a New Year's speech that touched the hearts of everyone.
一年来，许多人和事感动着我们。一辈子深藏功名、初心不改的张福清，把青春和生命献给脱贫事业的黄文秀。 为救火而捐躯的四川木里31名勇士。
14亿人口当中，能有我的小女的名字在主席的口中，在主席的心中，我就希望在扶贫攻坚战场上的人，听习主席的话，听党中央的话。 以后做得比王文秀更加优秀。
By the end of 2020, more than 1,800 people sacrificed their lives to poverty alleviation work. Because of their service, the once poor and needy have a hope for a better life. Their life stories are of youth, aspirations, perseverance, and sacrifice. Each generation has their own long march, and every generation is entrusted with new responsibilities. Building a moderately prosperous society and leaving no individual behind is the commitment of more than 3 million poverty alleviation workers who have devoted their lives to the cause, of people from all ethnicities and backgrounds, and every individual who refuses to surrender to poverty. With every great cause comes great sacrifice and unwavering devotion.
全面建成小康社会，一个也不能少；共同富裕路上，一个也不能掉队。
翻山越岭，一颗心，连着贫穷的百姓。日出东方。 让阳光照亮渴望的眼睛，风艰困难，砥砺前 前行，但遇见风雨，海水流淌真情，共艰困难，砥砺前行，但遇见风雨，海水流淌真情。踏上征程，心向光。